So 21 seconds back to Wellens, Jorgensen and company. 49 back to the next chasing group. Group of the riders, including Van Aert, Girmay and Vermeers, who we just saw. And this is Jorgensen doing most of the chasing here. A reminder that Sturven, pardon me, alongside Tarling, just sitting on here because their mates are up the road. I'm sure they wouldn't mind a tow to the front, but they're not doing any work to get there. Vermeers has had to do his own work to get back on. Still a sizable group, this, by the way. But have they missed the boat? Listen to the encouragement. They love it here. They've even had a bus ride out. Parked in a farmer's car park. What else would you do on a Friday afternoon?
Couldn't think of anything better to do myself. I just love it. It's just wonderful, isn't it? And particularly even at the start, Rob, that when we saw the team's presentation and you saw all of the old days from the care home down the road. They had front row seats. They had the best view of the whole sign on. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's for everybody, isn't it? The kids, it's for anybody to really enjoy your Friday. I mean, what better entertainment do you want than the world's best riders passing by?
And the world's best are thrilling at the front, aren't they?
They are.
The world's best are there. Mathieu van der Poel, Filippo Ganna, Mads Pedersen, all rather like at the weekend. In one form or another, they've been world champions. Interesting that Ganna should come here to the cobbles, by the way, this year and have a go. He's never won a one-day race on the road. Moving on from the track, at least for the next couple of years, before the next Olympic cycle does get better and sort of develops again. We might see a Ganna that's more adapted to this type of racing. He's certainly mixing it with the best at the moment. It's their second wheel who'll come through and ride in a minute. And they're doing well to continue to increase the gap here. It's gone up to 34 seconds to Jorgensen and company.
He always looks very undergeared, I have to say, Ganna, on over the last couple of weeks, and particularly in San Remo, where everybody else is. You could see that the chain's tight. You've got that tension there. They're pushing on the gear. Whether it's just he's got so much power, he's almost spinning out. But he always looks to be with a very, very high cadence in comparison to the others.
Onto the Varent. It's a staple of Flemish racing, this road. Of course, they aren't Paris-Roubaix cobbles, but there's 400 metres of something that's a little bit worse than a clinker. $70 to go. Next up will be the Boineberg. Van Aert's group at almost a minute. He finds himself right smack bang in the middle of the group. Girmay is sitting a little closer to the front. Noex have missed the move. They came here with Abrahamsen. Scorset and Tiller here as well. Just following this move is William Blumer. The man making the move, 227, is Anthony Torchis, winner of a stage of the Tour de France last year. He's all about racing on off-road sectors. The day in the Champagne region, wasn't it? Glorious it was.
All in hot weather conditions. What a stage that was.
They haven't quite found the same here, though, have they? It's a cold, cold day. And there's rain forecast from about now onwards. Hope it
it's been
stays as
threatening,
dry as we
hasn't
can.
it? And it's not as bright as it has been over the last week or so, where we've had wonderful weather conditions here in Belgium, particularly for this time of year. I mean, what a wonderful start to spring we've had for these early spring races. But then again, that changes things as well, Rob. Several more climbs to come. You've got several more cobble sectors to come. It always changes the dynamic of a race as well when you've got the rain. You don't take the call.
Now he was climbing at Paris-Nice. He's softening the legs of those with him, or at least trying to.
And that was impressive when you saw the way that he was able to ride over the first part of the race, well, the majority of the race, until sadly the Schelmo's had crashed down. The way he was climbing and the way that he climbed on the penultimate day was absolutely remarkable. The fact that he was climbing with world's best climbers and he was still there, it shows that he's got that form, but also coming into his bread and butter of the season, wanting to really thrive across these next 10 days, 2 weeks.
Still a large group behind, around at the front. Pithy we've seen in this group too. Talking of gaps growing, Hannah, it's now 40 seconds between groups 1 and 2.
And despite everything that Jorgensen's doing in that chasing group, and of course with Wellens and Kung and Trentin, they're not able to do anything about that strong cohesion they've got in the front group of 5. And I think when you've got such firepower in that first group of Van der Poel, Pedersen, De Gent, Ganner, and another Pedersen, two Danes, you're really up against it. And even from the peloton here, 1:15 now.
Michael Matthews on the move, trying to follow Tish Benoot and Pierre Gautrat. Rasmus Tillers, the rider in the red and orange. There is Michael Matthews. Again, so close to his dream race. Milano Sanremo at the weekend. 4th place for him there. Girmay closes the gap on this one. Just as he does that, Benoot makes another dig. And another hill disappears. Next up, the Eckenberg. Eckenberg coming back actually after roadworks the last year. Forced it to be off the menu. There won't be much let up after that, because then it's back towards Markedal. And we've got that combination, haven't we? Stationsberg. Steenbeek, Dries and Marieborgstraat all together. Steenbeek, Dries, of course, they descend it rather than climb it really this time. Climbing the Stationsberg, cobbled climb. When we come to the Tour of Flanders, will be a descent.
And it's so rough as well. There's on that, and you're traveling at such speed on those cobbles, descending down. You've got, of course, that sharp right-hand turn once you go over the railway, and it's just sometimes can be hell, I tell you.
Little chat there between Paulet and the rider from Lidl Trek who was alongside him. Just the danger of the impetus completely gone out of that group. Nobody's riding in that group anymore, Hannah. It's just attack, pause, attack, and that's reflected in the gap at 121 now, isn't it, growing?
It certainly is, and even the fact that in the chasing group they're not making any inroads. I mean, it's grown up to 50 seconds now, and I don't think they should give up the belief that they can do something, because for the majority of this final now, they're going to be heading into a headwind, and I do think that it doesn't work into the favour of a breakaway. But the thing is, you've got such a strong breakaway here who are fully committed, and you've got three of the world's best, and then joined by Andy Genton, and then of course Casper Pedersen. I do think in that group behind, they shouldn't give up the ghost, to be honest. I think they should keep it on, and you never know, particularly as we start to head into other climbs that are coming, and you've got a wind coming onto the left-hand side at the moment. They'll sort of head up towards a point. They'll take a left-hand turn. The wind will be onto the right-hand shoulder of these riders, and then they'll start to head into that headwind for basically the whole final part, give or take, traversing your way through the countryside back to Harelbeke.
Mars Pedersen there at the front as they're onto the next sector of cobbles. And heading up the Eckenberg. It's a Flemish monument of a hill, this one. So much history here. And two world champions are pulling the front group on with a 48-second gap. Mathieu van der Poel winning his second Milano-San Remo at the weekend.
Look after your tyres. Don't puncture now.
Worked hard to get here, hasn't he, Ganna? In fact, the whole team did.
And it was so deliberate what they did. That was a real plan. It was an absolute mark on the road. They knew exactly where they wanted to go. It was with such ferocity.
52 seconds then is the delay for Jorgensen and company as they start the Eckenberg. Hill number 11 of 17. Still not up the hill yet here. Everybody hanging in there, including the two attackers.
And this kind of climb, Rob, it's so much harder than it looks on paper when you see the vital stats of the climb. It's 1,200 meters. You've got an average of 5%, but you add in the fact of these cobbles, of the steep gradients that you've got, and it just doesn't really relent. You almost feel like it's never ending, to be quite honest. And even when you start to get towards the top, you're still just continuing to go, and you've got those little sections where everybody's trying to ride on the smooth section. You can just see one of the riders there from, is that there, Total Energy, I think Anthony Turgis once again, just trying to ride and from the cobbles.
Near the top of the reconditioned Eckenberg. Kind of looking for those easier bits, but having to dodge in and out, of course, to avoid the obstacles. It's Mars Pedersen at the front. By the way, his next win will be his 50th as a professional. All the talk about him going for cobbled monuments, something that's evaded him so far. Monument of any type. But he has won cobbled classics before. He's got two Kent Wevelgems in the locker and the Kurne, Brussels Kurne as well. Next opportunity for Matteo Trentin to grab a feed coming up at the top here. Missed the last couple, didn't he?
And this is why I say, it's crucial now that he makes sure he gets something from this feed. And even if he doubles up with bottles, and then each of those bottles will have, no doubt, a gel attached to both of those. But it's another reason why you also want to make sure that you start with a good amount of fuel in the pocket, whether that be the gels, and particularly making sure you're fueling yourself in the first part of the race, because now you want to make sure that you come into this section, Rob, and the fact that it is so hard to, if you do miss something, to get something from a team car, you certainly don't want to get to this point in the race, or with 10 kilometers to go, and then start to get the bonk, and you're really starting to feel it. You're really starting to feel depleted. It's also a race for the team personnel to get from one feed to another. As soon as the race is passed, straight into the cars, straight into the vans. They're sector hopping. They're wanting to get there, and of course they know their job is crucial. The riders also rely on them to help them in the race. It's a real team effort, not just riders on the bike and bumps on saddles.
The race is within a race. There's a few of those going on the road as well, Annie. Just while we're watching these sort of go by, or waiting to get to the last couple of climbs and things like that, and maybe they can start to think about how they'd attack and try and win the race from this group. It's just going away from the rest of the riders on the road, isn't it? It's now 54 seconds to Jorgensen and company. It's almost 2 minutes to this lot now, as yet more feeds are missed. Thomas Chignard, thankfully taking his second opportunity. Hannah.
Groupama, no less.
The rivals.
Inter-French rivalry, becoming friends, you know.
You scratch my bike. 60k to go, Hannah. 2 minutes almost of a gap. Can we count this lot out?
It's becoming increasingly prevalent that you can. You know, if they wanted to try and do something, and particularly the fact that there were riders and teams who had a couple of numbers where they could have afforded to sacrifice riders within the team to try and close this down. It's one of those too long, Rob. You can't be sitting back and almost waiting for the race to come back to you. And so, you know, as it starts to get towards and nearing 2 minutes now, and it's still such a large group, this is the surprising thing. And we're not getting too much of a look at how the peloton looks, to be honest. We're very much focusing on these 5 riders, and you're not getting a look at what is happening. Is there plenty of attacks coming from behind, and then you just have this lull, or is anybody contributing? How does everyone look? What's the body language looking like? You know, is everybody completely spent? Because don't forget, this has been a real arduous race before we've even got to some of the key decisive moments. And it's only the fact that things have been so hard out on the road. And when you take a look at this chasing group with Jorgensen, Trentin and Wellens, you know, more often than not, we're seeing the man in the yellow jersey on the front quite a lot. And he knows it's his big opportunity to try and win E3 here.
And Matteo Jorgensen in wonderful form, as we saw, that rest after Paris-Nice. Of course, 5th last season, just days before becoming the first ever American to win Dwars door Vlaanderen. A minute now. A full minute between Paul Pedersen, De Gent, Ganna and Casper Pedersen. They're the riders on your picture now. And the chasers, Jorgensen, Wellens, Kung, Trentin, and then 2 passengers in that group, and with every right to be passengers as well, Tarling and Stern. At almost 2 minutes, you now have the rest of the peloton, including Van Aert, Girmay, Matthews. Stationsberg. There is the station. Not the steepest hill, lots of twists and turns, and thankfully it's dry. Across the tracks they come, and final reminder, a week on Sunday it'll be over the other side, descending down this road, but it can be treacherous. And they'll have taken on the Steenberg trees and Maria Borstraat before that. They're all working well together in this group, though. Certainly the 3 stars. De Gent and Casper Pedersen, well, they must think that they're not quite in dreamland here, but they have an awesome opportunity, if they can stay in the wheels for a while, to pull off a big result for their teams.
An awesome opportunity, but they've put themselves in that position. And when we saw that it was again the man at the back here in the red jersey from Cofidis who was the instigator of that move, and it was Pedersen who came across. We saw a couple of riders attempting to try and bridge with Nikias Merkel, and one of the rider, I think it was Gonzalo Serrano from Movistar, who tried to come across. But they've presented themselves with this opportunity, and to try and put yourself in the right place to take a chance. And that was when the the race was at a little bit of a lull. It was all being well controlled. And so, now it's a case of, right, try and follow the wheels, try and follow these top three riders, and let's see what can happen. And particularly the fact that the gap is only growing behind. You can see as well that, and again, just having a little bit of a tough time, because these, again, it's deceptive when you're traveling at such speed and when you're seeing it on television. But when you see these cobbles up close, Rob, they're not in good shape. They're so rough that they're very, they're hard to ride on. And when you see the state of the cobbles up close and how rough they are and how you've got little dips and divots in the road, it's incredibly tough. It's incredibly hard. And it saps your energy.
So down the Steenweg onto Maria Borrestraat. Counts as a flat cobbled sector here. .109 and continues to grow. Now there's a third group and a fourth group now being listed. That peloton must have split over the Stationsberg. We did see attacks, didn't we, when we had those little looks at it? But as Anna was saying, directors have not been concentrating on that back group. Back to the front of the race. Man with a number 1 on his back. He is, of course, Mathieu van der Poel. If he wins today, can join Van Aert, Schmil, Museo and Eddie Plankert with 2 wins. And this is what's happening behind. It's Matthews, it's Van Aert and Girmay, and they're putting in a dig to try and separate this group. Lawrence Pithy's trying to follow. Bob Jungels is up there as well. And Matthews is looking strong in the meantime. The team cars are finally being allowed to get away from this group. We've got the longest gap between sectors now that's been for quite a while. We've got 10 kilometres until the Kapelberg.
I know they've not got a rider represented in the first 5 or the group of 6 that are chasing, but Total Energy have got numbers here, and they've got Gachinard, they've had Turgis. But the thing is, you're on the wrong side of things here, and of course for them, each and every race that they do comes with such importance, and that almost sound like a bit of a broken record with the relegation that will be at the end of this year. But of course they need the points, and of course big points come with these one-day races. And so for Gachinard, who we've seen up towards the front, Gis we've seen also with Leroux, with great importance that they need to keep the pressure applied. They need to try and get themselves up here, and also not give up here at this section in the race. And they, you do see on sectors here where the gap starts to open up. There's a few tired legs that you can really start to see pretty prominent within groups.
Back with Matthews. Pierre Gautrin is in there as well. We're number 95, running this race for the first time. And there has been that split in that group. They're still at 2:14 now. And again, just bits and pieces of riders all over the place as we find out that Markadal is racing. It's one of the homes of bike racing in this part of the world. Now, Pithy trying to drive this one. Again, Lidl Trek have representation. They've got a rider in just about every group. This time it looks to be Squinch.
We'll see our mate Nathan van Hooydonk on the roadside there, just giving Wout van Aert a good old shout, a good cheer. There with wheels, ready and waiting. Should any of the riders from Visma Lease Bike have a trouble, bit of a problem.
He's a busy boy, is Nathan.
And they just doing a top job, isn't they?
Another short, sharp descents, footpath width, out of the forest, down the hill. The beauty of the Flemish then. Again, an opportunity to try and get away for Turgis. Once more, he's marked. And that's the job for Squinch now. Trentin. And this group, a reminder, with Trentin, you see Sturven, Tarling, Kung, Jorgensen, Wellens. It's been a non-stop, full-gas race. To be honest, it's been strange since the start after that crash.
It's been very strange, hasn't it? And of course, it's completely changed the outcome, the scenario, the way that teams would have expected to utilise their riders and come in with a big strategy, and the sports directors make a big plan of how they want to, what's the plan of attack for E3? And of course, for many teams, straight away, that tactic, you can rest on your laurels a little bit that it against. You can rest on your laurels a little bit that it against.
Time deficits continue to grow as we approach the final 50 kilometres now. 1-4. And it's the A team up here, isn't it? Last year's winner, Van der Poel. Gan now hoping to win his first one-day road race. Mars Pedersen wants E3 as his 50th career win. In Middelkent, Kasper Pedersen hoping to spring a shock. They were the two attackers. I sort of feel we're playing the waiting game a little bit, watching this front group as well, Hannah, as we're back with Van Aert's group and the notes on the attack.
It is a case of almost that waiting game. It is a case of, when's the next rider, when's the next team going to make a move? Tish Bini now in the yellow jersey, stretching things out on this sector here.
Nine days to go to the Ronde van Vlaanderen. After the opening weekend, those cobbled races seem to fade into the background a bit, don't they? Today, though, is the day where the passion really returns. It's the E3 Prijs Harelbeke, the E3 Saxo Classic, and there are 50 kilometres remaining. Mathieu van der Poel's at the front of the race alongside Mars Pedersen. He made the move on the Tyenberg that allowed this to happen after the Ineos Grenadiers had really driven it into the foot to help Filippo Ganna. Just before that happened, Emir de Kent and Kasper Pedersen had managed to get a head start. And we've now got 5 stars with a 1 minute 20-second gap. In the chasing group, Tim Wellens, Matteo Jorgensen, Stefan Kung, Matteo Trentin, and 2 teammates of riders who are here. They are Josh Tarling of Ineos Grenadiers and Jasper Sturven from Lidl Trek. Anna Walker with me, Rob Hatch. And behind, a group of at least 40, 50 riders in a peloton that includes Wout van Aert, Tish Benoot, Binyam Girmay, Lawrence Pithy, Michael Matthews. It's all set up for us to go to the final few climbs, and coming next in a couple of kilometres' time is the Kapelberg. After that, we will head to the Paterberg, then the Kwaremont. A reminder that in this particular race, it's the other way round, isn't it? Then we've got the E3 hill, that's the Karnemelbeekstraat. The final hill here is the Tiekenberg with just over 20 kilometres to go. After that, it's a run into Harelbeke, the usual ride around the housing estate, and then the finish in front of the thousands of fans that were lining up at the start as well. A little bit of spots of rains about. Just see them on the camera lens. It's been threatening all day long. And the reason we've had such a fast race so far as well is because we had a crash early on. 50-odd riders were at the front. That forced Alpecin de Koning to do a lot of chasing, but it certainly hasn't weakened their main man, Hannah.
It certainly hasn't, and it just shows that he's able to manage the stress, and so are the team. The fact that he's got such a strong, dedicated team around him. When you take a look at the lineup with Bayer, Maurice, Holman, Dillier, Riesebeker, and Vermeers, and Dillier for a long time pulling to close that deficit. But as you say, for many other riders, they would have been affected by that, and to be at that point so far back, 3 minutes, and have used so much of their resources, their riders, their teammates, and to be up against a group of 50 who were on the right foot, it certainly doesn't challenge him. I think it's not just his tactical abilities and knowing exactly where he needs to be, and of course at that point he was on the back foot, and not just his physical capabilities, but mentally, he never seems out of sorts when something starts to go wrong. He must be so strong mentally to deal with things that happen throughout a race and not be affected by it. I think is, you take a look, this all-round champion.
Well, 48 kilometres remain. Champions everywhere. Looks like the gaps are changing in Group 3, and that move that we just saw off the front there from Bini might be having an effect. In just a minute's time, we're going to welcome our viewers on TNT Sports 1. Everybody's joining us for the grand finale. And those who've been watching all afternoon on TNT Sports 5 and on Discovery Plus, it's been a pleasure to have your company. Just had the feeling since those moves, it's continued to build without exploding into life again. We've got some of the most famous hills in cycling still to come. Well, we'll welcome our viewers on TNT Sports 1, giving a brief update as to what's happened as we see issues here for Lawrence Piffy. Looks to be a puncture. It is a puncture. A very warm welcome to viewers joining us on TNT Sports 1. It's the dress rehearsal for the Tour of Flanders. 9 days to go to the Ronde. E3 taking place on a route that could grace the mighty Ronde itself, just without the monument distance. That means, though, that the hills are squeezed together, and we are already on Helling number 13 of 17 now. Anna Walker with me, Rob Hatch, and yes, if you're switching on for the first time, you are looking at not one, but two former world champions at the front. There's a former time trial world champion with them, and two riders who got ahead of the chaos that then ensued on the Tyenberg. They are Casper Pedersen and Emma de Gent. The world stars I'm talking about are Mathieu van der Poel, winner of this race last year. Alongside him, Mads Pedersen. He made the main move on the Tyenberg, trying to do his best Tornado Tom Bonen impression. And alongside them is second place finisher in Sanremo at the weekend, Filippo Ganna. 46.9 kilometres remain. And after this Kapelberg climb here, the riders will then head to the Paterberg and the Oude Kwaremont. Two more hills after that and a run into the finish. Spots of rain starting to fall. It's been a cold afternoon in Flanders. There's a huge crash early on that put a big split in the peloton. Alpecin have had to work hard all day, but this race is up for grabs. Plenty of encouragement. There's loads of people on the road today, especially when you consider that it's a Friday afternoon and the weather hasn't really been playing ball. But to the top of another climb they come, into an open farmer's field they will ride, and it's Filippo Ganna who looks round, and he'll see open road at the minute. The gap is 1 minute and 15 seconds to Tim Wellens, Matteo Jorgensen, Stefan Kung, Josh Tarling, Jasper Stuyven and Matteo Trentin. This is this group. Hannah, 1:15 the gap. Is there still an opportunity for this lot to get in, or has that passed now?
It's been holding steady, hasn't it, Rob? I don't think it's the fact that they don't have enough kilometres to try and bring things back. They certainly are capable of doing so. But I just think you've got so much firepower between these three riders who are doing the big bulk of the work in the front group with Pedersen, Van der Poel and Ganna, that it's just making it difficult. It's just holding steady, that group behind. And I do wonder, when we started to see, before we welcomed our viewers on TNT1, we started to see Tish Benoot of Visma Lease Bike starting to stretch things out from the peloton, and perhaps in that chasing group, which includes his teammate Matteo Jorgensen, maybe they're realizing, well, this isn't coming back to heel. We're not able to do anything about the gap, despite Jorgensen working well with Wellens, Kung, and of course with Matteo Trentin. How can they win this race? And it's a desirable event. It's a desirable race that riders want to have on their Palmares. It's no surprise why every single year you have such a stacked field of riders and teams. Everybody wants to win this race. And it also is a good indicator.
So many times riders who've won this race have gone on to win the Ronde van Vlaanderen. I mean, there's no curse here like there is with the Omloop het Nieuwsblad that happens on opening weekend. Hannah, palmarès at this race: 5 times winner Tom Boonen, 4 for Rick van Looy, 3 for Cancellara and Braas, 2 for Van Aert, Schmil, Museo and Eddie Plankert. And of course last year, Mathieu van der Poel winning for the first time. He then went on to do the Flanders-Roubaix double.
And there's very few riders who've done the double. Yeah, there's only 10 riders in history who've been able to do that with Cancellara, Terpstra, Askeren. Of course, Van der Poel, you've mentioned, who, as well as Museo.
The wind and rain starting to have more of an effect. Talking of the wind, it's a headwind forecast to ride back into Adelbeke. Will that be playing on anyone's mind here, Hannah?
Ordinarily, I think the headwind would play against the 5 who are out front, normally. But it also depends on how much they've got in the chasing group in Group 2 and what is happening in Group 3. And again, we're not getting a good look really as to what's happening, but the gap has gone from, over the last 5 kilometres, from 1:40, and it's grown again to 2.5 minutes now. And so ordinarily, if they had the firepower, it's a perfect opportunity, the fact you've got the headwind, in my opinion. If it was a tailwind and it was in reverse, it's playing right into the hands of these 5. But yeah, I just think we've had such a hard race, such a difficult parcours, and arguably sometimes harder than some of the other big spring classics that we see here in Belgium. It's almost looking in favour of these 5, particularly the 3 that are doing the bulk of the work now.
So far in this race, we've had a faster than average speed. It's almost at 47 kilometres per hour. That's between the average and the fastest predicted time by the organisers. Well, with Mars Pedersen and Mathieu van der Poel involved, it was never going to be anything other than that, was it? Here we go then, on our way to the Paterberg. This time last year, as we go past this tent, about to take this right turn, we had drama, didn't we? Wout van Aert crashing uphill, Mathieu van der Poel riding away and soloing to win with 43 k's to go. Keep your eyes on them here, because it's the Pater. It's steep, it's short, it's just 400 metres. But this can decide races. It's Mars Pedersen, it is Mathieu van der Poel, and the cobbles are just starting to get that little bit slippy.
And this is where the danger comes, because it's not rained heavily. It's just that little sprinkling where you still ride as if it's dry, but it becomes slippery. It's got that little grease on the top layer of the cobble. And so, you know, it also adds another layer of difficulty, and particularly for those behind you who are roaring into the bottom of the Paterberg.
And Filippo Ganna as well just has to grit his teeth once more. We saw him do it so often at the weekend. Casper Pedersen starting to show a bit of a reaction, and it's Mars Pedersen again, just as he has done in several races recently, showing how good he is uphill. De Kent really has to chase here to make sure he's still in contact. And we haven't even been to the Quaremont yet. That's next.
That reaction from Casper Pedersen in the navy blue jersey of Soudal Quickstep there, the fact that he was starting to struggle, lost a couple of bike lengths, Rob, that was no easy feat. I can tell you, when you get to the top of the Paterberg, your legs and lungs are absolutely screaming.
And that's exactly what's happening to this group here, led by Matteo Jorgensen in the yellow jersey for Visma Lease Bike. He will be desperately trying to rescue this race from them. All the pressure on Wout van Aert. They all talk about him. Yes, I agree, it's probably too much, but it's the way the Flemish press works. They will have reporters queuing outside the bus unless they get somebody up to try and challenge at the front in this race today. The back as well. And Jorgensen just opening up half a wheel. Left turn. At the top here, the steepest bit out the way. And there are just over 42 kilometres remaining from this point. It's a very quick dive down back onto the flat and in towards the Quaremont. Emir Gent has returned and the gap has increased after the pater to just over 120.
Great effort from him again to get himself back there. The fact that he was struggling so much, I mean, it's no easy feat. What we didn't see over the top of the Paterberg, of course, you've got that descent where you can get that breather, use that opportunity to get some recovery, and you've got the character chase to get back into the wheels. And like I said before, top job from Casper Pedersen. The problem is, how much is all of this taking out of those two riders? Each and every blow that Pedersen or Van der Poel or Ganna deals to them, it's just another chip away at their energy reserves. And here you can see the descent from what is the chasing group here. Got himself back. I mean, he's showing an awful lot of grimacing there, but he's managed to haul his large body over the top of the Paterberg, down the other side.
Familiar run into the Alde Quaremont. Mars Pedersen passes some Danish supporters. And the rain continues to fall. Well, the longest hill of the lot now is approaching. It's the Alde Quaremont, Old Quarter Hill, 2.2 kilometres, average gradient of 4%, a maximum of 11.6. And after the race we've had, this will hurt. On to the start of the Quaremont, first little section without cobbles. Who does this suit, this particular hill, Hannah, out of this lot?
For me, it suits Mads Pedersen and Mathieu van der Poel. You know, but when you take a look at this part, you've got the first 600 meters, you've got the tarmac, and then you go onto the cobbles. The middle section is steep. You're onto the steeper gradients of 11%, and we've seen moves go from that point in the past. It's of course incredibly difficult the first 500 meters of that when it goes onto the cobbles. It's so difficult. It's also the fact that it's a long section too. I mean, you've got the section where you're at 11%, you're at church, it starts to flatten out just a little bit, and then it goes to around 2%. So it's just a really arduous kind of sector.
The punishment never seems to stop on this hill. Even when you're over that flatter section, it just continues to the top. And now Mathieu van der Poel starts to really press down on the pedals. The former world champion at the front in his grey jersey, representing Alpecin de Koning. A man who won Milano-San Remo for the second time in 3 years at the weekend. He's hoping to double up and retain the title he took 12 months ago here. Off into the gutter he goes. That'll be barriered off in 9 days' time for the Ronde van Vlaanderen. There's a little gap from Mars Pedersen to Filippo Ganna, and for Emir Gent and Casper Pedersen, it's hang-on time. It's the former world champions who are pulling away here. Hannah, you called it, you said it. They are those riders who this is much more suited to. It's now over to Pedersen to see if he can hang on.
And you can see already starting to find himself in difficulty. Van der Poel just keeping his eyes right in front of him, holding on to the middle section of the road. And now Pedersen on the uneven surface there as it starts to really kick up, struggling to hold on to the wheel of the Dutchman.
And that could be that. That could be that. Mathieu van der Poel going away halfway up the Quaremont into the village and continuing to power on. Mars Pedersen's resistance ceases and Mathieu van der Poel finds himself alone. The question is, with the headwind to the finish in the last 20 Ks, can he go on? Last year it was from the Pater. One hill earlier, 5 kilometres more. Ended up winning by a minute and a half on that day. Today, though, he is alone on the Quaremont, and he's still building this gap, Hannah.
He is, and this is a kind of sector, Rob. It can really make or break you. If you arrive here and you've overcooked yourself and you've done too much before you get to this point and you don't have something left in reserves, and you've got someone like Van der Poel who just makes that big acceleration, and we've seen him do it time and time and time again. It's just, and it's only growing. When you take a look at that helicopter shot, it's only growing to Pedersen. Don't forget, if these two arrive head-to-head, tete-a-tete, Pedersen has the upper hand. He can have the upper hand if it's in a head-to-head sprint. But there's so much more that goes on before you get to that point, Rob.
Mighty Mathieu has just ridden them all off his wheel. And in 2.2 kilometers, this race has been ripped up. 24 seconds to the group we saw just at the back there. We wait to find out the gap to Pedersen, but the Dane is no longer in the shot. Up to the top of the Oude Quademont, and it's the same Oude Mathieu van der Poel. There it is, the torture done. But he will look back, see the road, see the damage done, and he now looks a country mile in front of them all. It's head down, pedal away, 37.5 kilometers to the finish. Van der Poel's done the damage. The question now is there enough in the tank to bring it home, Hannah?
And that's the big question. But when you take a look at his body language and you see the way he's just come into this season, and if you think on Saturday, the way he rode in Milano-San Remo, what he was capable and what he was able to do to hold on some of the most ferocious attacks from Pogacar, I wouldn't be surprised. You take a look at this helicopter shot now and you see where Pedersen is. And there's complete daylight between the two of them. And so he's been able to really open up that gap. And for now, it's a case of what can Pedersen do in this scenario. And there you can just see him just in the background, but I'm curious of the headwind and how that's going to have an effect here, Rob.
Well, over the top here, Pedersen is riding. We know he's strong. He's in the form of his life. It's a 21-second gap. A reminder, there's still 2 climbs to go. Mathieu van der Poel on the Quademont. We've seen it in the Ronde before. And even in the little Ronde, he's able to punish everybody behind him. Pedersen's still looking strong here, though. There is Ganna, and it's Emir de Kent who's the closest to him. 32 seconds to Ganna and de Kent, and it's Casper Pedersen who's the one who's suffered the most on the Oude Quademont. Not even in the shot there. .36.5 kilometers to go. Riders get a brief breather. We're going to take one of our own off for a commercial break. And those of you on our digital platforms know that we aren't going anywhere. 15 seconds now. Mats Pedersen is slowly bringing back this gap. It's an indication of his strength. He looked, you looked at the gap there. Van der Poel looked like he'd broken him.
Especially when you saw it at 29 seconds, 28 seconds, that gap. I think that's pretty remarkable. Now they've got on to this road here. And yeah, they're only for the last kilometre or so, they're into a tailwind. They're going to make that right-hand turn. Then they'll make that loop round. Then they'll be into the headwind, So right now it's almost... it is playing into the hands of Van der Poel, of course, but I think for Pedersen, he's got that strength. He knows that now he's over one of the toughest sections of the Oude Quademont and over the top. He's looking good as well. When he's firing on all cylinders, there's very few with this kind of strength. He's almost like a bull, isn't he?
Oh, we've seen him in stage races. We know he can time trial when he has to, too.
Absolutely.
So can this man. Gets his own gap down to 27 seconds. Again, whatever happens, however the final shake-up lands, Filippo Ganna absolutely flying down here. Has really improved in this kind of racing. 2 targets acquired for Top Ganna in front. The first is Mars Pedersen. Second, the man travelling at 70 k's an hour down here. In front, at the front, and hoping to stay there, is Mathieu van der Poel. A reminder that he knows this road and the bad sides of it pretty well too. On the right-hand side there was a very famous incident in the Ronde van Vlaanderen. The rain is falling in Flanders. And Mathieu van der Poel continues to ride through it. 16 seconds of a gap to Mars Pedersen, who he dropped on the Quaremont. Two minutes back to what I assume is the main peloton now. A reminder that the Karnemelbeekstraat is next up. Yuri Jonas watching Mathieu van der Poel in the E3 Saxo Classic. Edri Pres Harelbeke. 208 kilometers in total, 17 climbs, of which 2 now remain. We're approaching the penultimate climb, the E3 hill, Karnemelbeekstraat. 1.5 kilometers long. And while he's wearing one, Hannah Walker, Mathieu van der Poel, whenever he's raced a one-day race this season, has ended up number 1. He started winning Le Samin on his opening day on the 4th of March. He won Milano-San Remo again at the weekend. A minute, he's in prime position to wear 1 next time he starts here next year again. But it's not done and dusted, because look at Mars Pedersen, 14 seconds. He's not given up. He never gives up. He is riding out of his skin here.
And he always does. And particularly when he knows he's got that opportunity, when you see the tenacity that Mars Pedersen races with, the rider from Lidl Trek, it's quite remarkable. I mean, he's such a leader within that team of Lidl Trek, and I think he has a huge impact on the start line, the start list within the team, the starting roster of Lidl Trek, and the way that he approaches a race, and not just for the riders, but of course for the staff too. And so for Pedersen, you know, he's a winner. He's competitive. He wants to be up there. He wants to add this race to his palmares. And of course, he's not going to give up. He's not going to give up without a fight. And there's still so much that can happen. Of course, we've got our penultimate climb coming up, the Karnemelbeekstraat, which is, just over 1,500 meters long. But then, of course, we go on to that short cobble sector again, onto Warrant, before we get to the Tegenberg. But then you've got that, 20 kilometers or so, 21 kilometers to go until you get to the finish. And so it's not all over. It's almost that agonizing gap between Pedersen and Van der Poel right now.
What happens to the gap here? Because we saw on the Oude Quaremont that Mathieu van der Poel was able to distance Mars Pedersen. But this is a different climb, different gradient, different surface. Mars Pedersen has the man to chase up ahead. You're looking back at number 3 on the road at 24 seconds, Filippo Ganna. And in the meantime, we haven't seen them properly for a while, have we? We saw a very quick shot of them, just enough to see that there are a couple of riders dropped from the Wellens-Jorgensen group. Kung and Sterven still there, but including those dropped, Trentin and Tarling. They are at almost 2 minutes.
And you get a good opportunity here, Rob, to see just how steep this climb is. Okay, it's shorter than the Oude Quaremont, but it only by, 700 meters. Its average gradient is actually steeper than the Oude Quaremont, and you see steeper gradients, and maximum gradients steeper than the Quaremont of 18%. And it's sheltered. Of course, you don't have the cobble, so that adds some sort of easier it's more easier on this kind of climb than the Quadramont itself, but you still have those steeper gradients, and particularly the fact that if you're chasing down someone who's got that punch, got that acceleration.
Van der Poel through the centre of these crazy supporters. He's come to give them the show they wanted. And if the time gaps are to be believed, he is at least holding what he has to Mats Pedersen on this climb. Come around the corner, greeted by more supporters. Some of them been camping out this year. And here comes his main adversary. I guess the rain falling. It's Mats Pedersen weather, isn't it?
I think that's a races he's won in the past in such treacherous conditions. They haven't been bad ones, have they? But this is where it starts to get a little bit intense. The fact that it's slick, the roads, and it's getting worse, particularly at the finish line. It's raining much heavier. Oh.
Scare there for Ganna. All right, gap at 36 seconds to him. It has increased on that climb to Ganna by around 10 seconds. And in fact, if you look at those gaps, it does look as though Van der Poel has put another few seconds into Mats Pedersen.
But to be honest, on that kind of climb, I'm not surprised. And I think the fact if Mats Pedersen, by the time things start to settle out, if he loses 4 or 5 seconds after that penultimate climb there on the Quadramont, I think he can be almost happy with that. The fact that he hasn't lost more to Van der Poel.
On and off of Ronde van Vlaanderen-straat. The road dedicated to the Tour of Flanders. And it's on this road they will all stand again a week on Sunday. The culmination of the Flemish Holy Week. It's 20 seconds for one of their cycling gods. Mathieu Van der Poel from just over the border in the Netherlands. He's a Flemish resident. He did most of his life in Flanders. Although we'll keep that quiet. The Dutch fans might not like that. Here is Mathieu Van der Poel's, I was going to say third group, but we've still got a few riders behind. The main challengers, including Jorgensen, Wellens and co, they're a long way back though to be considered true challengers. They are looking for a top 5 finish. That's their realistic hope, isn't it? The minute, you would have to say that we've seen the 3 riders are going to be on the podium, haven't we, Hannah, barring any surprise?
I think so. Barring any accident, incident, disaster, I think the 3 riders that you're going to see on the podium, of course, it's Van der Poel, Mats Pedersen and Filippo Ganna, particularly when you start to see the gaps. I am curious how, I mean, we're not really getting a look at it, because where is Aimed Gent? Is he that far behind Ganna? You never know if he's got something left, and you never know if Ganna starts to capitulate, what might happen. Quite sure of that time gap.
Down the Nieuwe Quadramont. This is, of course, the descent I was talking about a minute ago, where Mathieu Van der Poel had his incident in the Ronde. Chasing back on. Dutch champions jersey, providing so much drama. Flying down the Nieuwe Quadramont is Mats Pedersen. .27 Ks to go, and Ganna continues to fight. He's at 46 seconds, however, now. The gap's increased to 24 for Van der Poel on Pedersen. The passion is everywhere to see. And this is only the start of 9 days of craziness in Flanders. On Sunday, it's against Wevelgem in Vladersfield. Wednesday, racing in Waregem. That's Dwars of Vlaanderen. And then the Ronde itself. Over the Schelde. And doing so as the leader with almost half a minute now. Pedersen really getting close, wasn't he, before that Karnemelkbeekstraat. And Van der Poel just pushed on. Over the hill, on the descent, and now over the River Schelde. Those Pedersen supporters, well, they'll be happy to see their man up there. Not so happy to see who's leading the race. Still 26 Ks to go. And our 17th and final hurdle in the form of a hill will come in just 5 Ks time. Ooh. As we get a reminder of what can happen. It is never over until it's over. And there's always a hiccup around every corner. Here we go again, Hannah. And even the best crossers have the issues. Ay, 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 ay.
And this is why I say you've got to be really cautious when you don't have a big downpour. You still race. And even though you can see it's slick on the roads and the rain has been falling, you still race as if it's dry. And you still push on in each of these corners, the roundabouts, as if it was dry. And so it's just that little reminder now for Van der Poel. Don't push over the limits too far. You know, accidents still can happen. It's still not over until you get to that finish line in Harelbeke. But again, also for those who are chasing behind Rob, that's another reminder.
Eat and drink. Be wary. Onto the Varent. Oh, and look at the state of this. It has poured down in the last 10-15 minutes. But Van der Poel remains calm. And he begins the final flat cobbled sector with a 32-second gap. A very warm welcome back with Mathieu van der Poel on the Varent. All 2 kilometers of it. And the nerves have crept in. And it's unsurprising. He's been flying along, building his advantage. But whilst those of you watching on the telly were away at a commercial break, he had a wobble, didn't he, Hannah?
He did. Into a right-hand roundabout out of the other side. Oh, and even here on the Varent, he's using every inch of the road, and you can't even say it's the road. He's having to run off onto the grass, off onto the chalky roads, onto the pathway. I mean, he's really pushing his limits here. And even at that roundabout, when he came out of the other side, you know, it was a real reminder, that wake-up call of, you know, you can't push things. And you know, I say it again, you can't race as if you're in the dry when you've had such a downpour. Okay, we've not had torrential rainy conditions throughout the whole race, but when you've had this shower and the roads are wet, the cobbles are slippery, they're slimy, you can see the shine on the top surface and on the top layer. They're lethal, and they can be lethal. I think you've done the majority of the race, Rob, with your tyre pressures if it's dry.
Hannah.
Almost a half hindsight, managed to correct it, didn't he?
Wasn't impressed with himself too much.
I'm not surprised.
But I'll tell you what, the gap really is increasing. Pedersen fading a little, Van der Poel looking as strong. And it's now almost 40 seconds. It's been a fascinating battle. And certainly with Pedersen in this kind of form. But as we saw at the weekend, on those days where Van der Poel is the Van der Poel we know and love, might not be possible to beat him. It ain't far from that, though.
you've got to be on a top day, haven't you? I think for Mads Pedersen, he really attacked the Paterberg. How much did that cost him? Particularly when you're going into such a difficult section like the Oude which is far longer than the Paterberg. Maybe he was trying to use that as a section to really put Van der Poel under pressure and to try and break him there. Who knows? Nevertheless, it's not through want of trying here for Mads Pedersen. Curious if he went for the one-by system, Mads Pedersen. You see just moments ago on the Varand, they had a very, very large cog at the back on the block at the back. You know, whether he's gone for the one-by, range of gears, how's that playing into effect? Who knows?
It wouldn't be the first time that riders from that particular team had done that. We've seen it in various teams, haven't we? And depending on the various manufacturers they use, we saw the last couple of years that this Melissa bike were keen on using that. Looking down there, looks like it might be the case, Hannah. Not 100% sure. I think the camera operators have the same idea as you have because they were trying to focus in there. But we're looking back at the number
I'm on
one.
Speed dial.
It's a more traditional setup for Van der Poel there. Well, just an illustration of the long solos that have happened. 47.3, that might have been a bit of a porky pie, that one. I think it was 43 kilometres last year, but it was the longest at the Edri Saxo Classic. Cancellara next at 35. If he takes this home, he's going to have 1 and 2 on that ranking, because I think there was a good 37 kilometres or so when he made his move at the Quartermat.
Yeah, I think they just got the numbers the wrong way around to 43.7, 47.3.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
And here is Pedersen. He's still got a good 20-odd seconds on Filippo Ganna. The reminder into a headwind in the final 20-odd Ks. And a low. Tiekenberg is next. Final climb here. That's when you need him. That's where he famously lost contact on the way in with his good mate